I'm really honored to have these two. Josh Payne has been a friend and an innovative producer that we've been working with for quite a while now at Rusted Plowshare Farm in Concordia, just down the road. And we wanted to have this session with Josh talking with Molly Taylor from PT Ranch, and you saw her video earlier, specifically because they are both thinking about family as part of this intergenerational nature of managing land with trees. The trees hopefully will outlive us, right? So they're coming from different places in that mix to some extent, and they'll each share a little bit about that. And also a lot has happened since these videos were shot, so they can share a little bit about that. And this session is also about having a time for Molly and Josh to talk without a moderator. So I'm going to leave the stage. I'll be support backup as needed for Q&A from the audience when we get to that. But this is really the producer's time to share. I think that somebody mentioned the hard truths of Silvopasture, to like get really real with us about what's happened since those lovely videos were produced, and hopefully enlighten us about the mistakes that they've made, so that, and the things that they're learning and the successes, so that we can all take it to the next step. So with that, I think your mic is on.
Is it on?
It's on.
There we go. All right. Well, Molly, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
I know. I tried to turn my video on. I messaged Mallory about it. It's not letting me. So once I can, I will.
Perfect. Yeah, that's about our farm motto. I'm supposed to be looking at Molly over here as I'm talking. Our farm motto is from the book of Mice and Men. It's even the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And so I kind of feel like this will fit in with that really well, Molly. So
yeah, I agree.
As I was watching your video, and by the way, that was the first time I've seen the video of my farm. I just haven't seen it. So that was interesting. But my question for you, Molly, is like, what's changed since you've seen that? Like, it's been how many years now? 2 or 3?
Yeah, we started that planning in 2021, so about 3 years.
Right. So what's your reaction? You saw this video here. It's been 3 years. A lot has happened. Like, what are you thinking now?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I feel like hindsight is 2020. We learn from experimentation, and that was, to some degree, I think, what was probably sort of the biggest takeaway from the planting that we did in 2021. It was highly experimental, 6,000 trees, super diversified systems and species, right? So we were using non-natives as well as natives in a variety of different pasture settings and sort of planting design. Some were on contour, some were along fence line. Oh, it looks like I can start my video now. Oh, hello. Can you see me now? Okay, cool. So, from that experimentation, I think what changed is just my awareness of the complexities of silvopasture. We didn't have an established silvopasture in the sense that we weren't starting from the beginning, right? Like, as you saw from the video, this is an oak savanna, which is also a silvopasture, but that type of silvopasture is already established. So I think in terms of like what I've learned, what's changed is really around potentially the challenges around actually getting a silvopasture established from the point of a tree being less than 1 year old, a year old, to mature and crop producing, which, you mentioned in your video, like 10 years is when you're going to get a profitable chestnut crop, right? And I think as much as we can approach silvopastures with that in mind, like what is the real intent for each species, for each design, right? Like I talked about shade and carbon, right? Which is great, but it's also challenging if there's not a specific cropping system that's going to continue to motivate the maintenance of that planting. So I think just like that context of learning from the challenges of getting it established to the point where they can thrive.
Yeah, so you're mentioning these challenges, right? And so like how I would describe my farm, silvopasture, everything, I would call it early successional. It's like it's just kind of starting out, it's growing. It looks like yours is the same way. You were talking future tense for the most part. This is going to
Right.
be like this. I hope this becomes right. How's it working so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, I think there's a lot of lessons learned. There were a lot of failures, and I think that's what when I was invited to speak here, I sort of accepted with the clause that I would probably be sharing a lot of these lessons learned. There in the interim period of these 3 years, I like to say that we experienced like the 7 plagues. There was pretty much every potential environmental climate disaster occurred, from like intense flooding in which certain areas of plantings were underwater for months, right? To like frost that came at random times and would freeze trees that had just budded, right? To extreme pest pressure that we didn't expect, extreme drought. When we planted the trees, we had not received any rain in about a year. So when it came time to plant the trees, like we still hadn't gotten rain, and we had normally would get rain for a couple months by that time in the year. And we're operating under a grant program. We were sort of under the gun. We ended up waiting for one rain at the very least, but the trees, I think, struggled in the face of this changing climate, right? Like they are vulnerable little trees, and we pretty much threw the kitchen sink at them. So that's a bit of a winding answer, but I'm actually curious to hear the same from you. The last we spoke, you had some challenges, some successes as well, but I'm just curious where you are now after a few years.
Yeah, when I was watching that, I was like, man, everything worked when we did that video. Like
Yeah.
it was green. There was forage growing, and I was on a hot streak, I guess, at that time.
Yeah.
It was like everything was going well, right?
You were having triplets left and right.
Say what?
You were having triplets left and right.
Yes, exactly. And the kids were having a great time with it all, and so yeah, it's so everything was working, right? We had a really high success rate on our chestnut plantings. I'm thinking, okay, I know how to plant trees, I know how to make all this work. And so then from there, we decided, so we're completely out of row crops. We don't do that anymore. Kind of a long story, but so we're out of row crops into only grazing sheep, and we took the rest of our farm over. And we expanded out north. We used Equip to get a big grant, to get a big cost share deal. And we built all our fence. We put in in-ground water infrastructure for animals, and we planted windbreaks, and they all died, every one of them. Because the last 2 years we have had the worst drought. Like we've been like nobody can remember a drought that's been this bad, and it's been very unconducive. And so I've gone from thinking I'm pretty good at this stuff to there's a lot more that I need help with. And so, yeah, so we're going to do it again next year. We're going to plant the 3-line windbreak again. We're trying to figure out how do we go off of now water access points and start tree lines using drip irrigation if we need to. So we're still planning on those things, but it's a lot harder than we thought. So,
Yeah, I'm also curious, like you said in the video that you had gotten 100 pounds of chestnuts, I believe. Have you continued to be able to harvest chestnuts, and have you brought them to market?
Yeah, so we're still, our trees are about 6 years old, or they're 6 years in the ground, so they're just not there yet. But we're like in the process there, they seem to be on the growth curve that NU says that they should be. So we're feeling pretty good about that despite the drought. We've done some very limited irrigation, largely in an IBC tote behind a side-by-side. So yeah, like we're feeling good about the progression of the chestnuts. It's all of the silvopasture and the things that are very long-term, highly motivated by highly motivated by the problems that could come with animals. So that we've struggled with recently. So I feel like there's answers here, and there's probably people who are smarter than me that have those answers. I just need to know who they are. So
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think is worth noting, and maybe the crowd would be interested in considering, is that, you know, the type of funding that you deploy, I do think is important. You know, like I think you mentioned that you were working with NRCS, and we actually worked with a B corporation, who paid us per tree to plant the trees, which, in general, after using that type of funding, I would probably recommend against, for a couple of reasons. It generally prioritizes more trees than you maybe would want to plant or is contextually appropriate. The motivation of this B Corp was to basically say, we planted this amount of trees, right? If you've ever been shopping online and seen a statement appear after you purchase something that says, with this purchase, a tree was planted, right? That was the type of funding that we received. But it's super motivated by that tree count and not necessarily by the quality of the project from a project design standpoint, right? Because the design element is super critical in tree mortality, right? You need the proper irrigation, you need the proper protection. And we did our very best, given the parameters, to provide all of those, all of that supporting infrastructure, right? Like we did, many of our systems were planted on with drip line. Every single tree received a cardboard tree sleeve to protect it from sun and to some extent grazing pressure. The trees that were in pastures with cattle received actual like physical like hard fence around it. So I guess what I'm trying to share here is that all of those expenses can add up very quickly. And I think it's really important to, when you're approached with a funding opportunity, to consider that in your decision-making process. And I guess I'm just curious, with your experience using NRCS funding, what was the sort of rationale you and your family used to sort of crunch the numbers and determine which cropping systems would work where?
yeah, and I'll answer that. Make sure I come back to, because I've got a question about your planning process that I'm really curious about. So don't let me forget that, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so we largely went with NRCS because it was a known entity. We had done a bunch of stuff like through the FSA, like just in row cropping and cover cropping. So we knew the people there. We knew there was like our gap as row crop people. We didn't know anything about planting trees. You know, we've done some ornamental stuff in our yard, but we didn't know anything about mass stuff. And so we knew that there would be some technical assistance. There would be people there who could help us design these. And then, you know, and also because we were able to kind of bundle it with some other stuff. Like we bundled it with our interior cross fencing. We bundled it with water. We bundled it with portable shade structures. So like all that kind of in one lump sum was really attractive to us doing that. So now the problem with that, one of the big downfalls, we had to front the bill up. We had to pay up front, you know, so we have to pay for everything. We get reimbursed once it's checked off on. And when stuff doesn't work, sometimes like our 3-line windbreak, we still haven't got paid for that yet. So we will next year, but, and that could just be my fault in not working the system, but yeah, so that's why we chose that. I'm always wanting some rich donor to say, hey, I'll pay you all the money to plant trees, but I realize that may not be as good as I think sometimes too, right? So then, but you were mentioning, you're like, I'm like you went through and you said we figured out how to do this, right? Was this like you got on Google and started YouTubing videos about planting trees, about establishment? Like what was your, like, were you the one who came up with the technical idea of like the whole processing or like planting, and how'd that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And no, we actually hired a consultant who designed not only the species selection, but the areas on the ranch in which we planted. There were some complexities in working with a consultant. The consultant actually wasn't from our area, which I think is common. Like, you know, I'm zooming in from California to you all. I think that's just a example of how few and far between these silvopasture projects actually are. So it was actually really challenging to find a consultant who could help us. You know, California is a Mediterranean climate. Like I mentioned, we do have a oak savanna, which is a type of silvopasture already here, but the type that we were attempting to establish didn't really have precedent, which maybe should have been a red flag when we designed the project. But, you know, I think I was really inspired by some of what I was learning sort of theoretically about the benefits of silvopasture. So the consultant worked with us based off of our existing enterprises, which is we run a pasture raised meat business. So we raise poultry, turkey, specifically turkeys and chickens, and then we graze ruminants, cattle and sheep. And then we also have a swine enterprise with our hogs. So we wanted to augment all of those different systems with the integration of trees. And I sort of touched on it in the video. Like, each design was sort of inspired by an enterprise, right? Like, one area was meant to provide fodder specifically for ruminants, another for pigs, you know, the integration of poultry with shade and other attributes there seemed really great. So that was like the high level approach. In the actual implementation, the part of this agreement with the consultant was that they would actually help us plant the trees. So they came out and actually brought a planter that, I don't know if you've seen this before, but it's literally a pull behind in a tractor, and you sit on a little seat, and you actually bend over, and as it's creating, you know, a little tillage row, you plant your tiny tree. And when you're planting 6,000 trees, you really need that level of efficiency to get the planting in the ground. So the agreement was the consultant helped us design, procure the species, and plant the trees, and then my farm team and I helped lay the irrigation, stake the trees, put the cardboard protector over the tree, and then place the mulch around the tree, which was pretty much what we did in 2021 before the 7 plagues occurred. So yeah, but how did it work with you? It sounds like the technical assistance came from NRCS.
Yeah, and my wife calls me Tom Sawyer sometimes. So we managed to find some church groups who came out and planted all our trees for us.
Perfect.
We dug the holes ahead of time, and you know, I almost got them to pay me to do it. So it was like, it was a good experience. It was worthwhile for them, meaningful. We got to talk to. They still come back to our farm, and they're like, "Hey, I planted that tree," which is which is fun. But I also realized there's probably some issues there in terms of like planting, like planting acumen. Although like there were some people there who were papers, and they taught me a lot about planting trees, so that worked all right too. What's like when you were talking though, I was hearing the reasons you were doing like some of these things, and like so I was thinking through okay, the reason I want to do silvopasture, like very similar reasons, but it all came from my grandpa. It was really like this grumpy 90-year-old who literally his advice to me is, I just sell bulldozers in 20 years if you plant trees. So But he's like, you can't have sheep on our farm. We don't have any shade, right? It's like, you can't have sheep. You don't have any grass. You can't have sheep. And it's over and over and over. The things I really enjoy about the silvopasture community. Is there a backup mic just in case? Like about like the silvopasture tree community is like, I spent my time as a row crop farmer trying to figure out how to kill things. Like if something's in my field, I want to get rid of it. I can do that with a chemical, and I can kill like what I don't want in there. I think the fun thing for me and the addicting thing about planting, like using trees and using plants to solve long-term problems is that I get to figure out how to make things live to solve problems. I mean, it sounds like you're you're kind of doing the same thing like long-term. It's just, for me, it's just really addicting.
Yeah, no, I share that sentiment. I mean, the olive trees in particular feel like a multi-generational investment. I mean, I think the saying goes, you plant an olive tree for your grandchild. So, I mean, it may take that long to really become profitable with the olives, but you know, I find that of all of the things that grow on the ranch, I go out and check on my silvopasture trees probably the most. Like, I mean, obviously we tend to the animals daily, but like what I sort of like go and want to see the progress of it are these trees. Like I love taking my coffee out in the morning to certain parts of the planting and just like sort of being there with them in the morning. And there's something really cool about that. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it besides sort of how you described it, which is like there was no kind of intervention here except for like human inspiration to get these trees planted. Like we as like a community talked enough to like get someone excited about the potential of these trees, and then we did this crazy thing. Like it's just it is really sort of a fun it is a fun project, and for that reason I'm really glad that we did it. Yeah.
Really. As you were talking about that, I was like, so like the other thing, I don't like to kill things now. I also am trying to figure out how not to use machinery. I found out yesterday I can use oxen to do pretty much everything I want to do on the farm. Anyway,
Yeah.
not silvopasture.
Yeah.
So you mentioned an olive tree. You plant them for your grandkids, right? I also know we talked before, and you farm with older people, older family members, a family member of your generation. Like I'm in the same situation. I farm with, or I have farmed with, he's 95 now, still lives on the farm. We still give him the daily updates. And I also farm with my sister who's about my age, little kids around. So trees are a multi-generational thing. Like you can't just, like I can walk away from a corn crop anytime, right? At end of the year, done, out if I want to. Can't do that with trees. They're so how is the people side of this, like the intergenerational, like the people side, how does that affect your silvopasture planning?
Yeah. You know, it was funny because when we were first approached by the B Corp with the funding potential, it was like mid 2020. So it was like very sort of early in the pandemic. And I remember being like, I think as many of us were very sort of like stir crazy. And I think that the scale of this project was sort of insane. And I do credit some of that insanity to like COVID era energy. But I remember approaching my parents and I was like, we're on lockdown. Like we could use this time to plant trees. Like, look, it's perfect timing. And they were sort of like, okay, like, but what about, you know, the financial aspect? So I, you know, introduced them to the B Corp. We sat down and looked at the funding opportunity, you know, what it wouldn't cover, what it would cover. And I think, you know, from their perspective, they see this ranch as a carbon sink, a long-term place for biodiversity. You know, that is their passion as well. So the tree element spoke to them in the fact that I think they felt like they were providing the opportunity for my generation to benefit from the enhanced ecosystem services that would follow from the project. So I think they were on board, really. I mean, it wasn't challenging to get them to understand the ecological aspects, but I know that that's not always the case. I'd say that we may be sort of in a unique situation in which, you know, my parents sort of prioritize that that element of the property. But I'd love to hear the same from you. I mean, what was it like talking with your family about it?
Let's just say they weren't quite so supportive. We had like our chestnut deal for our chestnut planting. We had 3 equip contracts that we got all the way to the kitchen table. We're going to sign this contract, ready to go. And my grandpa nixed it each time. Like just there, next year, do it again. Next year, do it again. And again, it was, you know, there's and I think the people side of farming is interesting because my grandpa saw it as a threat. Like we end up, so we put our chestnut orchard, like we were planting this. My grandpa's, you know, out there helping me put mulch in. He's out there crying, right? And turns out that when he moved to the farm in 1950, he rented from a guy who had an apple orchard in the exact same spot. And my grandpa killed it with 2,4-D the first year he was there, right? He's like, get rid of that thing. And then this whole pasture that we just put in with all the silvopasture, like with the trees that we have planted, with the windbreaks and everything like that, that was all there when he came. And he ripped it all out. He got Conservation Farmer of the Year in 1968 for putting in terraces and ripping out pasture. And so like who he was, who he had done, he's like, what did I do to get this stupid grandson who wants to take, you know, get rid of my corn and soy and plant trees, right? And there's a lot of really hard stuff that goes into that. But, you know, but the good thing is like my sister's around. And you talked about COVID. My sister's a teacher. She was a teacher. I used to be a teacher. The COVID hit, her school shut down. We were building fence like we started off with 200 ewes, 15 acres that we built, and we just kept building fence like ahead of the ewes where they were moving to, right? And so she came and she learned to love to build fence in the summer of COVID, and that's what caused her to want to farm. And so it's fun because like we see the world the same way. Like, you know, we're almost kind of hippies, like, you know, but so we want to sequester carbon, we want to take care of animals, and we want to do that by bringing life, right? And so it's nice that we're kind of on the same page, but like the row crop, older generation, it's been really tough. I think for us though, like he's stubborn. I'm not stubborn, of course not. So he's stubborn, I'm stubborn, but I think in a good way. Like I think we both just kind of decided, and it's a different value system. It's like, I'm not going to leave you. You're not going to like you can't leave me because you can't drive anymore. But it's like, we're not going to leave each other. We're stuck here. We care for the land. And no matter how mad you get at me and how mad I get you, we're going to be here because we care about each other. And I think like for me, that's just like, that's a really, it's countercultural, especially where we are, maybe, I don't know, maybe where you are too.
No, we're definitely the weirdest ones on the block for sure.
Good. I'm glad you are too.
Well, that's a really special story though, with your grandpa. And, you know, I think beyond all of the actual, you know, ecological and physical attributes that the planting brings, I do think that that's a huge part of it, is just like being that kind of iconoclast who is not following the norms of your community maybe, or the agricultural practices of your community. It takes a certain amount of bravery and, you know, gumption to kind of to do that. So I really respect that you did that where you are in your context. So
well, you're the reason block too.
yeah.
So.
But I think we have some questions. I don't know if we want to, I don't know if I can't see the room, but I see that there's questions on the Zoom.
What kind of chestnut did you plant, and have you started pruning those? Are you going to, as they grow, are you going to have to prune those once a year at least?
Yeah. So Molly, this question's for me. Could you hear that question?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah. So it's about chestnuts. I just plant whatever you tell me to plant. No, we got 3-year-old grafted trees from Forest Keeling. We tried to get like a nice variety, a nice mixture of grafted varieties. We put 5-foot tall cages around them. After a couple of years, we pruned on top of that, and we try to prune it towards the central leader. So we do a little bit of work in the winter for that. So.
And so to find out exactly what kind you planted, I can go to the Forest Keeling catalog.
Yeah, and they have some new varieties. I think MU has some new varieties. We planted Ching and peach and like several others. I think we have 4 different varieties in our planting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just while we're on chestnuts, the management of your chestnut crop along with your sheep grazing,
Yeah.
do you anticipate issues with the husks, or do you have to sweep that so they don't hurt themselves, or accidentally consume or something?
Yeah. And again, Molly, so another chestnut question. This brings up something really interesting. So there's a guy that I talked to about growing chestnuts. And I'm like, hey, can I graze in between here? And he's like, no way. He's like, you cannot do that. You're going to ruin the hooves of a bunch of animals. And we just haven't seen it. They it doesn't seem to bother the sheep. Now, so what we do, we graze differently based upon the time of the year, right? So if grass is growing quickly, we'll graze through our 30-acre chestnut patch in 2 days. Now in the winter, we'll go through and we bale graze. So we'll unroll hay bales. We do really small strip graze. So the whole thing gets covered in hay, and we use it as fertilizer, right? And so we just graze through that. However, we need to graze the grass kind of. And what's nice is they kind of do a nice job of doing some low pruning for us. They prune through the cages. So yeah.
It seemed to me that both of you planted bare root trees, and I was wondering whether you had thought of going with more mature trees that are in pots or whatever. You said 3-year grafted on the chestnut. Isn't that what you?
For our chestnuts, we
Yeah.
did, yeah.
But I'm just curious about that decision.
Molly, go ahead.
Yeah, actually we planted multiple ages of trees. I'd say for the original planting, it was all bare root, but we since then, when we had some mortality, would come in with different ages. And it was really interesting because I assumed that a more mature tree would have a better chance of surviving. And it's actually been the opposite case with us. The oldest trees we ever planted actually all died. And it could have been it was definitely a multitude of factors, not just their age, but a lot of the people I've spoken to actually recommend younger bare root over older container trees.
Yeah, and similar, we planted a lot. We did our chestnut orchard, our very high, and we baby the chestnuts. We take care of them. And we thought the other, the windbreaks, the Silvopasture that we have planted, a lot of times we want to plant a lot of trees. We still want to take care of them. But it's just bare root trees are a lot cheaper to start off with. And I can do them in March. I can put them in the ground and take care of them that way. Now there's some other people who are a lot smarter than I know. Molly's probably got it figured out. But Austin here, he can and there's a lot of people here who can say this is how you should plant trees, a certain variety the best way. Here's how you plant a mulberry. Here's how you can sheet compost a chestnut or an oak. And so I just feel like some of that is very species dependent upon what you're going to do. Is that fair enough, Austin? So. Yep.
Any reason that you spring plant trees rather than fall plant?
Because that's when the MDC sends them to me. That's a great question. Yeah, I've been talking to some people the last couple of days about that. I'm definitely interested in maybe changing some of those practices. I think the bigger one for me, the thing that I'm trying to figure out is how do I get water, appropriate water that livestock can that can be safe for the water is not going to be an issue for the livestock. The lines are going to be an issue for the livestock stepping on them. But how do I get water consistently to trees? If I'm going to do a block of silvopasture, is it better for me to go out with a tote of water that I can fill up in a field from a hydrant somewhere? and then hand water that, or get my kids to hand water that? Or is it better to put in drip irrigation and plant them closer together? Like those are like, for me, I'm a little bit more interested in that than I am in like, is it spring or fall? Again, that's probably species dependent. Like, what about you, Molly? Why do you plant in the spring?
We actually like to plant in the fall. We couldn't plant in the fall for the major silvopasture project because of the drought. It was just, I mean, literally like bone dry conditions. So we ended up postponing until the winter, which around here is still an appropriate time to plant. So fall or winter is when we'll plant here.
I mean, a part of my theory was we get normally consistent spring rains. The last 2 years when we tried to plant trees, we just didn't have it. So we didn't get a rain the last 2 years from March until June at our place. So it was a rough couple of years for that. That's a part of that, just for consistent rains there. So
Sorry. So both of you either use a B Corp or the NRCS to get your tree seedlings. Have you considered creating your own tree nurseries for trees that, whether they're the species you currently have or making other improvements on the farm?
yeah, Molly, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did. That's a great idea. And I do know some sort of ambitious operations that do that. I'd say given our capacity here, that would fall kind of outside of what we'd be able to manage. But I think that's a really appropriate solution for like nonprofit farms, farms that have a little bit more leeway in terms of like their cash flow. I think it would be hard to justify from a cash flow perspective as a for-profit ranch business.
Yeah. And for us, like largely it's labor. We've just been in infrastructure. We went from like complete row crop to 800 U's and chestnuts. We've been in infrastructure building mode for the last 3 years. This year is the year that we're going to start. I've got a bunch of chestnuts ready to go into seedling containers that I'm going to get from my chestnuts from this last year. I would love to have a nursery there. And what's nice is we have a lot of the infrastructure. We have a pond, we have water that we can access through there. So I really want to do that. So
Let's see, are there chances for graft failure later in the spring? We've been operating under that assumption for larger grafted trees. This is from Emily Wright, farmer here in Missouri.
do you do grafted trees, Molly?
We intended to graft some. We have yet to graft though. We could be now in the next 2 or 3 years the appropriate time to graft, however.
Yeah, I mean, and there's always possibilities for graft failure. I think a lot of that's like skill and probably quite a bit of luck too. So, like if somebody wants to come really teach me how to top work trees really well, I would love that. So you can pay me to do it. That's the Tom Sawyer model. So
I have another question too, since I have the mic. You talked to Josh briefly about the intergenerational working with family. Both of you talked about this. And for Molly, especially, I'm like, and maybe for you too, Josh, you've got kids that are engaged on the farm. Hopefully they're still excited about the farm in another 20 years. I'm curious to hear your perspective on that, what that trajectory looks like. And then also for Molly, you're at the beginning of this very long-term adventure, hopefully. And I'm curious what that looks like for you and your family.
Yeah. I think we're all trying to focus on maintenance, right? So like we realize that like our mulch is now completely, composted, right? So we need to put more mulch down. Some of most of the cardboard tree protectors have, degraded, things like that. So I think we're now kind of shifting gears into like, how do we tend for the trees? And this is a new enterprise for us. Like we weren't orchardists, right? So I think, there's a lot of learning that needs to be done, and pruning is a great example. Like we're sort of new at that, but we know that we need to get better. And I think we're just really focused on how to protect and sort of highlight what we have now, moving forward. So that's definitely a family affair.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to say that, and I think it's really addictive to kids. I referenced this in the video. Like my experience growing up on a row crop farm was I picked up sticks and rocks. That's what I did. It was brutal. And so the nice thing, like what you're talking about, like we have to learn stuff. We don't just know stuff. MFA doesn't just tell us what to plant and tell us how to spray stuff, right? We have to become experts in these things, and we're not there yet. There's a lot of like these really technical questions. We need to learn the answers to these things, but I think that's really addictive to kids. Like kids see me having to learn having to Google, having to talk to people who know these things, and they realize that, and they see this is a valuable thing that's worth my time and worth my thought, and like they pick up on that, and that for me that's a really valuable deal. The other thing is I have this theory from being a teacher. It's like I think kids often are just bored because they don't have a purpose. They're just not needed. And I think the great thing about the stage that we're in and like our design for the model, this is to your question, Hannah. It's like our kids are needed. Like they're home from school today because it's cold, right? I don't get it, but so they're home from school today, and if the sheep are gone, I'm not there. And guess who gets to put the gets to put the sheep back in? The 12-year-old, the 9-year-old, the 7-year-old. They go out, they bundle up, and they do it. Like we need them to do that. We need them to bottle feed animals. We need them to, like our 9-year-old picks up every chestnut that we have so far. After school in the side by side. Don't tell OSHA that, please. But yeah, it's one of those deals like they are needed on our farm. And I'm hoping like if they want to come back, we think we've created an economic structure in which and the flexibility that they can have their own enterprise thing on our farm, right? We think we can do that. But they don't have to either. We can also just pare back and we can graze the elderberries that we plant instead of process them, right? So yeah, that's kind of how that's like I'm super excited about the possibility of that. So yeah, so I think we just have a like time for maybe one more question.
What would you do differently? I mean, I know you've learned so much, but what's your like biggest, if I could do it over again, what would I do differently?
And can I add a question from Molly that I really want to know? So, the question was, what would you do differently, right? My question, would you do it again as well? What would you do differently? And would you do it again? Would you do your silvopasture planter thing again?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would have done differently is I would have taken less money and done less planting. I was like starstruck at the opportunity, and combined with COVID insanity was like totally all over it. But, you know, in hindsight, I would have done a much smaller planting, and that would have given us more overall resources with which to manage that planting. It wouldn't have been quite so like epic, but it would have been maybe more manageable. There was like it was way too much to manage for us most of the time, what we ended up doing. So that's what I would do differently. And would I do it again? I'd say that in a way, I feel like I'm always doing it again, because every time we like lose some trees, I'm like, okay, gotta get in some more trees here, you know? And like, it's kind of the running joke every like fall and winter, like somehow more trees show up here. And like our employee Alejandro and I are always joking, like, I'm like, sorry that there's some more trees on their way, you know? And like, I think it may be like a lifelong addiction at this point, is just planting trees. So yeah.
And look, that's fantastic. For that question, I would do it all again. I am doing it again, and we'll do it next year. If it were me, I would hire a professional consultant. I like to think that I can figure pretty much anything out, whether it's YouTube or just read a lot of books. I can teach myself anything, right? And man, this is a long-term thing, and it would go so much better if I got it started well. So if I was like, I would hire a professional consultant, or I would be nice to somebody and they would do it for free. I don't know. So that's if I was going to do it, that's what I would do. All right. Well, Molly, are we good?
Thank you guys. This was really nice talking with you. Bye.
The awkward Zoom exit.
I
Well
think
done.
I'm supposed to leave now. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you so much, Josh and Molly. That was great. This is what happens, the real conversations when we step out of the way.